filter it and put it in our, and run it in generators, diesel vehicles, whatever.
Well, you know, there is a company locally that is doing some of that.
There is.
Up in the Slate Belt, we're just drawing a mental blank on the company.
Smarter Fuel. Smarter Fuel.
Smarter Fuel, thank you. That's kind of, that is actually accumulating. We collect it, and they reuse that. They reuse that oil, the vegetable oil, for energy
It runs
purposes.
the Allentown Fair.
What's that?
It runs the Allentown Fair.
It runs the Allentown Fair. Yeah, you've been there.
But the federal government's going to take away trans fatty acids, so we'll have less of them.
Okay. All right. Well, on that point, your point's a fair one, but there is a lot of innovation going on with people do use waste. Now, I mean, I can show you recycling operations around here where they're sorting out, glass and bottles and plastics, and they're absolutely reusing much of this waste, and because there's a market for it. I mean, if you go to this, scrap yards there at 7th and Sumner Avenue, and you can see all the metal that they're recycling, and all our garbage, our junk, I shouldn't say garbage, junk, scrap metal. People are bringing it down there, and that stuff is being separated and processed and used for other purposes. So we're doing better. We're not where we need to be, as you point out, but we can do better. You have a final comment?
I have a question what's more for the future, because it's certainly not going to happen with the dynamics that's in Washington right now. How realistic is it to repeal laws? Like when they realize, I don't know, 4 years from now, boy, that healthcare law was really bad, we're finding more things about it that we don't like. How realistic is it to repeal something like that, replace it with something like if the cap and trade goes through, which I personally think is going to be bad for the economy, for them finally to say, you know what, that was a bad thing, and change that in the future. I know the dynamics have to be different, party-wise and things, but how realistic is that to repeal things?
Well, one of the reasons I objected to the health care law that was enacted, because my fear was that once you create this new entitlement program, it would be very hard to change it or to repeal it. Now that said, I do support repealing many of the major provisions of this thing and replacing them. But in the short term, let's be perfectly candid here, between now and this November election, not much is likely to change in terms of that law. Despite all the comments I hear every day from people, and there seems to be a new story each day, nearly every day or every week. Okay, so let's assume for a moment we have an election, and let's assume, and this is a big assumption, but let's assume that the House and the Senate was the Republican. Now let's make another big assumption, that the House and the Senate pass a bill to repeal the health care law and replace it with something else. Well, then you would have to think that the president who signed the health care law would then veto it. So, and you're not likely to have a 2/3 majority. So, okay, now let's make another assumption that 2013 you have a Republican president, Republican House, Republican Congress, Senate president. All right, these are all very big assumptions. But okay, then you can. So the earliest that you could, if they had the ability to do it, would be 2013. So in the short term, I guess I would say to you, there's probably not going to be much of a change. So I've been advocating that we try to at least repeal some of these provisions that are going to be absolutely problematic. I mean, there's one provision in the health care law, I mean, that you might have been reading about in the papers recently, or maybe not, but and it seems like it's an obscure issue that affects small businesses, but a 1099 form. If you get a 1099 form, if you basically it's provide a 1099 form if you do more than $600 in business. I got that. I'll take you back to the scrap metal company over there at Sumner Avenue. That's what I learned about it. I mean, he said that the guy who runs the plant there said to me, "This is a big problem." He said, "If I take $600, if I pay somebody more than $600 for their scrap, this is personal property in many cases." He said, "I process a few hundred people a day. Now I've got to give a 1099 form. I need their social security number. They're not going to want to give me that. This is going to be a nightmare for me. Why are you doing this?" Well, this is a way to grab some revenue for the federal government. But it's a very real practical problem. But I'm part of the bill just to repeal that particular section. Get rid of that. Or the medical device tax, which in this area, you got Olympus and Deedron and Boaz Medical and all these other companies, some large, some small, all calling me and saying this is going to add to that. By the way, that was the big story too. They said this is the healthcare law is not going to add to costs. I said, of course it will. I mean, if you're going to put a tax on insurance premiums, it's going to raise the cost, not going to lower the cost. If you put a tax on medical devices and products,